Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today I'm debuting my Heroes 5-hire T4 guide and team building guide. Now I got to tell you, I have gotten so many questions about this over the past weeks, and now I'm getting inundated with questions about new warriors. And here's the thing, if I really wanted to get lots of clicks and views, I would just put out my infographics as soon as the team was released, and I know a lot of people do them. I see a lot of bad infographics out there. Some of them even get posted on my Discord. I will tell you my guesses over stream. I will tell you them on videos. Like, here's my initial impressions. Here's my guess. Here's what I'm trying out. But I don't make recommendations until I feel confident about them. And this team is the reason why. I'll tell you, this team and this infographic was the hardest one I've ever had to do because I didn't get to play the team myself. It's basically you set it on war defense and it just does its own thing and you play against it. And so it's really something you kind of have to judge based on how the opponent's doing, how these abilities are working out. You don't know exactly what abilities they have. It's challenging. I mean, in other words, I've used the team in DD4, I've used the team elsewhere, but it doesn't function the same way outside of war defense. So I actually changed my views on this multiple times. I changed my views on the ISO and the T4 abilities quite a bit. You're going to see that they're radically different than they were the last time I had this infographic before Shangshi was released. And I will just tell you now that the ISO setup and everything here is made for going up against Infinity Watch. It probably won't matter against Weapon X anyway, but I obviously can't promise how this setup is going to do against Weapon X. So let's go right to the infographic. Great work by Punk once again. The infographic is linked below. It is on my Discord, which is also linked below as well. I always have my latest infographics there. But let's just go right to it. So in terms of gear priority, in my opinion, this team has tons of sustain. And what really keeps the team going and really makes it scary is the damage. So I do think you want Shangshi as an amazing damager. He's also one of the early targets. And so to me, having Shangshi and then Colleen Wing big is just they're going to put out a lot of damage. What makes the team scary, and I have a huge Heroes for Hire myself. What makes that team scary, in my opinion, and gets you those wins are when the enemy basically gets deleted before they get a chance to take a turn. So for example, when I on my team, when you look at a team like this, you can just sometimes these two characters will just Shangshi and Colleen Wing will just get you to a point where you can do almost nothing, can't even get started. So I think that is really what you want to do. Now, obviously against Weapon X it may be different, but for right now. I also want to talk about positioning. I changed my views on positioning. Originally what I did is I had Colleen Wing far away from Luke Cage because my thought process was now that Luke Cage taunts all the time. So Luke Cage, if you go to Luke Cage's passive, he taunts whenever a Heroes for Hire ally drops below 60% health. And so my thought process was, well, since you really want to keep your damage up, keep Colleen away and Shangshi away from Luke Cage. But as I found out, over time, at least my view is, having Colleen next to Luke Cage is actually helpful because she has all these counterattacks and it just outputs more and more damage. And so if you look actually at her kit, for example, while this character has deflect, which is almost all the time, or a lot of the time, gain 100% chance to counterattack. And so I think the splash damage coming off of Luke Cage going onto her, the counterattacks make it worth it. That's one way in which my views have changed. And I'd rather be right than get the most clicks. So, and this is one I really changed my view over time. ISO 8 is one where I've totally transformed my view on this. If you look at my last infographic, I had Iron Fist as healer, and I had Luke Cage as healer. Now I have Blue ISO on the team, first of all. And I will just tell you, Fortifier is garbage at the green ISO level. But at the blue ISO level, it's actually useful for someone like Luke Cage, because Luke Cage is often the first target. A lot of players just try to get Luke Cage down first because otherwise he's going to be taunting all the time. And so making it harder to get him down and get his charges down in the early part when all of the team is up, if they're focusing Luke Cage, I think it's just valuable. It gives the rest of the team, like Shangshi and Colleen, wing time to take down the enemy. The other thing I did is I took Iron Fist and I made him Skirmisher. So you may say, well, why are you doing this, Philosopher? Why Skirmisher? You could also make him Striker, but why is he... So, and I've seen people do that, but why not make him Healer? I will just say this. In every other game mode and against every other team, you want him as Healer. But if you are using Iron Fist on War Defense and he's facing Infinity Watch, I think you do not want him as Healer. And the reason why is because Adam Warlock, if on his turn clears regeneration from all enemies, and if any enemy had regeneration, he applies regeneration for 2 turns to the most injured ally. So what happens is if you have healers on your Heroes for Hire team, they generate regens, and then Infinity Watch comes in and they clear the regen, and then they actually generate regeneration for their own team. Because if you look at a healer character, let's find a character that is healer here. If you get him to tier 2, level 3, they apply regen instead of minor regen. So if you have tier 2, level 3 regen, or tier 2, level 3 healer, it's actually going to be worse versus Infinity Watch. This is why I take so much time to get these infographics out and deal with your barrage of questions and, when is the infographic coming out? Because I want to get it right. So that's why I'd rather be right than the first one out. I know that there's tons of these infographics floating around, but I think this one's right. All right. Now, essential T4 priority order. I talk a lot. I'll go through all of them, I suppose. But obviously what matters most and what people are most interested about is where Shang-Chi fits in. But if you haven't built the team yet or put all the T4s in yet, I can talk about where they go first. So I do have Luke Cage as the number 1. And the reason I have him number 1 is I think giving 20% more max health for the entire team is huge. Because this entire team is about, the mechanic is about getting them under 50% max health so that they, lose charges. And then also, obviously, with Luke Cage, when they get under 60% max health, Luke Cage taunts. I think you want these characters to be very beefy because they have all this healing and they have so much ability to come back. So I think having more max health is particularly important. Is particularly important for this team. So that's why I have it as the most essential. The next one I have is Iron Fist passive. I thought about putting this number 1 because I love passives like this one. So if you look at this passive, when a Hero for Hire ally drops below 50% health, apply defense up to that ally for 2 turns. I love this stuff because this is what I'll call out-of-turn healing, or this is out-of-turn buffing. Anytime you get to act out of your turn, I think that is amazing. It's often very, very powerful. So in other words, usually in this game, it's all about speed and turn meter and all of that. Well, essentially when you get to act out of turn, whether it's Kestrel pinging or Black Bolt pinging or Shuri putting deflex out, or in this one, a defense up, this essentially allows him to cut to the front of the line even though it's not his turn and get something done. So when your Heroes for Hire ally is in trouble, they get defense up. I think that's very, very valuable. All right. So that I think is the next one that is the second most essential on the list. And you will see the third one that I have is the Colleen Wing passive. The reason I have the Colleen Wing passive next is simply because when you go here, it gives plus 100 damage to the most injured enemy. That's a huge amount of the damage output here. At the end of any Heroes for Hire ally turn, it's 100% chance on war defense. Okay, which is very big. That's very big. And then on war defense, this always attacks. There it is. And instead of 100% damage, it's 200% damage plus all this piercing damage. I think that's huge. And then getting the 100% chance to counterattack. I think it's just a huge part of the damage output for this team. So I think that's worth having and really important for this to function. And so then I have Shang-Chi's passive last. Not that it's bad, but I just think it's less important. And this one, when with deflect, gain 20% crit chance and 10% block, which I think is good. A great thing for the team. I just think it's a little less essential. It does, obviously, the crit chance does help the damage output, not quite as much as that Colleen wing passive. The block is nice, but they already have quite a bit of sustain on the team, to put it mildly. The last one that I have here is the Misty Knight passive. Don't think this one is nearly as important. And this is on enemy death, apply speed up to 2 random heroes for higher allies herself. This just further kind of gets it punishes enemies that summon. It also, I think, gets things spiraling out of control. In other words, I'm sure you've noticed at times when you lose to this enemy, it kind of goes downhill fast. And this is part of the reason why. It's good, but it's more of a win more ability, in my opinion. It's like when you're already winning. And the focus is helpful, not quite as important as some of the other abilities we just talked about, but still, I'd say essential. This is, I will say, a high investment team, relatively high investment. We're talking 10 T4s that you really want to get going here. But I think there are some really good characters here. And Shang-Chi added quite a bit to the list. The Shang-Chi ultimate is next, and I really think this is a character that's useful in raids. He's useful elsewhere. And I think having 125% damage to all targets, not just in war defense, but elsewhere, is really useful. And then reducing the speed bar is very nice. And then, of course, I think the Colleen Wing ultimate is also really good for basically similar reason, where this is a really important character on this team. And when you do damage to all enemies, that's great. So it's at the very least in war, it's 250% piercing because it's to all 5. A heal block for 2 turns to all enemies, very important. But obviously elsewhere it could be even more important if you ever use her elsewhere. She, unlike Shang-Chi, is not used as much elsewhere. I have the Shang-Chi special next. Very good ability, because what this does is this gives you speed bar when he uses it, so you get to use the ability again very quickly thereafter. So I really like that. Filling speed bar, let's say 75%. So you can just quickly get to your next turn. I like speed and turns. So it's very good, but this isn't until turn 2, so less essential than the turn 1 ability, in my opinion. And then I have the Colleen Wing basic and special. I considered moving these to the nice but not essential one. And really the purpose here is just that you get an additional bleed for each one. The reason I have this one first is because it is also for her ISO attack, so she gets an extra bleed, but also the bleeds apply a higher damage multiplier whenever. So here's another extra bleed plus higher damage multiplier that's not stated here, but whenever you T4 an ability that has a bleed on it, the bleeds are at a higher damage multiplier. That is a very, very powerful piece of that. And so I put those there. I think I always like to have T4s on abilities that have bleeds. And I just think if you're doing this right, you need to have damage output here, and a lot of it comes from Colleen's bleeds. The rest of them aren't as important. I did move up the Iron Fist ultimate because now it can't be dodged if it's unavoidable if Shang-Chi is there, and it's a lot, 700% damage and all that. It is good. So another 100% damage is good. You like damage output, but it's not essential. The Misty Knight stuff, similar, really. The special, ultimate, and basic for her. We can take a look at those very quickly. It's just more damage. More damage. The reason I did this stuff is in my alliance, I get a lot of T4s, and this was an important team for us at the time. So I put them all in here, but I would not recommend this for most players. It's certainly not essential for this team. She became less important when Shang-Chi was entered the game, was released. This ability seems really nice, by the way, on paper, but you actually don't get to it very often because it's just not done. It's not one of the first abilities that's used by her. And then the Shang-Chi basic, I think, is pretty underwhelming as well. The Shang-Chi basic. I just don't think you're going to be using all that much because he's got low cooldowns on the special and the ultimate. So there you go, guys. That's what I would say about this team. Obviously, things can always change in this game because now you're going to be facing Weapon X. But I think right now, this is how I would set up this team. I want to give credit to Dismal Content. He was the one who mentioned that ISO switch, and I think he's right about that. That was his idea. And I always try to get ideas from as many good players as I can, and his I thought was particularly important there. So there you go. There you have it. If you like this video, smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. If you have comments or questions, you can put them below or go to my Discord. That's linked below. That's where my infographics, the latest version of them, is always at. You can also go to my Twitch stream. That's linked below as well.